Hey, welcome in my YouTube family and friends. Today we're going to whip up some amazing beef and peppers and snow peas. Quick, simple, delicious. You know how we do. Let's get it. All right, what we're going to use, we have two uh, pieces of steak here. This is 2.29 pounds sirloin tip steak. I've got a green pepper, I've got a red pepper. We've got a couple bags of snow peas. We're going to use some minced garlic. I'm going to use some brown gravy packs for the gravy. Clearly, I can make my own gravy, but for the type of gravy I want with this, I want it a little thinner, and I want it to have a certain flavor, and I can get that with these brown gravy packets. Then we're going to use our seasoning: salt, pepper, granulated garlic, onion, and stuff like that. So let me go ahead and get this meat rinsed off, and then we'll get into the cook. All right, we've got our meat rinsed off. What we're going to do, we're just going to cut the steak into strips. Now you can cut it into whatever size pieces you want to. I'm going to go fairly thin, probably a 1/4 inch by 2 inches to 2.5 inches. Those are the size strips I want for my stir fry. I think those are the perfect sizes for stir fry beef and broccoli and dishes like that. So that's what we're going to do here. Plus it makes it a lot easier to cook as far as getting it tender in a shorter amount of time if you break it down like that. So that you could cook it however you want to. Again, we're doing about a 1/4 inch by 2 inch. I love making this type of dish. I'll do it similarly with broccoli as well, and spoon it over some white rice, which is what we're going to do today. Tastes good. My kids love it, and you can stretch it pretty far. So you can make this dish and it can stretch pretty far, especially when you're using white rice with it. So it's one of our favorites. All right, we've got all our steak cut up into nice little strips. Pretty uniform strips. Some are a little longer than others, but as far as the width and the thickness, they're about all the same. Then here are our peppers. I actually had some onion in there that I forgot to tell you about, so I cut up that whole pepper, both those whole peppers, and I got a small onion in here as well. And we're gonna put all these peppers into that steak. I love a lot of peppers on my pepper steak, and so we're gonna use them all. Let me go ahead and get my electric skillet heated up, and then when it's hot, I'll bring you guys back in so you guys can see us get to cooking. Stay tuned, guys. All right, to season it up, we're going to go with just a smidge of olive oil. I don't want to cook this meat with hardly any oil in it because, when you cook down steak, sometimes it produces a lot of liquid, and I do want to get a brown on the steak, so I didn't want to put very much oil, but I am using it just to help with the meat not to stick or anything of that nature. So what we're going to season it up with, we're going to go with some coarse ground black pepper. Season it to your liking, to your taste. Like black pepper over here, so we're going to go pretty heavy with our black pepper. We've got some granulated garlic. Again, season it to your liking, to your specification, what works best for you and or your family. We've got some granulated onion. And then we're going to season it with some Montreal steak seasoning. I like the Montreal steak seasoning because it has a lot of coarse seasonings in it. The garlic, the onion, the salt, and the pepper. And we're just going to give it a good little mix. Make sure you get your meat well incorporated with that seasoning. Season it around real well. As you can see, there's not a lot of oil on this meat, and that's exactly what I want. If it starts to stick or it's a little too dry, I can always add oil to it, but I didn't want to start off with a ton of oil. So here's what our steak is looking like. I don't know if you can see that well, but it's seasoned really well. My electric skillet is heated up, so let's go ahead and get cooking. Get it down in there. Try to get it to where you're not laying on top of each other with your meat. If you have a lot of it, it's going to be inevitable, but do the best you can. And this is a non-stick pan, so I shouldn't have too many issues with it sticking, but I really want to try to get a nice brown on my meat before I add in my peppers and onions. I'm not going to cover it right now. Again, I don't want to have a whole lot of liquid building up in there if possible. So I'm going to leave the lid off of it. I've got the skillet set to 350 degrees. And we're just going to brown up this meat. So stick around, guys, and we'll be back. All right, guys, we're back. We're just, it's been cooking for about 3 or 4 minutes. You can see we're starting to get a little bit of color on some of it. But you could also see that it's starting to go ahead and make a lot of liquid. So with that, that's the reason why I didn't want to cover it up. Because if you do, it's going to make even more liquid. So what I'm trying to do is allow some of this liquid to evaporate. As soon as it makes it, I want it to kind of evaporate. That way I can continue on getting my meat brown. So I'm going to continue to let it cook down just a little bit until we get all the pieces browned up. It doesn't have to be cooked fully through because we're going to put gravy in and let it simmer. But I do want to get a little bit of a color on it before we go ahead and move on to the next step. So you guys will stick around. And as soon as I get ready to add my peppers and gravy, I'll bring you guys back. So just a sec. All right, we've cooked it another 3 or 4 minutes. Now I'm going to go ahead and start adding in my garlic and my peppers. Now the snap peas I'm going to add a little bit later on toward the cook because I don't want those really soft. I want them to still have a nice little crunch to them or a nice little bite. But my peppers and onions, I kind of like them to get a little soft since I'm adding so many in there. So we're just going to go in with a little bit of garlic. Then we're going to add all these peppers and onions into the pool. Now, if you're not as big of a fan of peppers and onions as me, then go with a little bit less. But like I said, I love peppers and onions cooked, especially in this dish. So I'm going to add those boys in there. And let's go ahead and give it a nice little toss to try to get everything mixed up and incorporated real well as best as we can. All right, so now that we've got that in there, we're going to continue to let this saute for a little bit with the lid off. We're going to continue on with the lid off just like we have it. I'm let this go for about 4 or 5 minutes. Then we're going to come in and put our gravy in there and then cover it up and let it simmer for a little while. So once we get ready to do that, I'll bring you guys back. Stick around. All right, guys, we've allowed our peppers to cook down for a few minutes. Now what we're going to do, we're going to add in our gravy. You just prepare your gravy according to the directions on the back. I actually like to add just a smidge more water. That way it doesn't thicken up super thick like regular gravy. It's a little bit thinner. And we're just going to go ahead and add that on in here. Now once the gravy comes to a boil, you're going to turn your skillet or turn your oven down on, or your stove on low. And you're going to let it simmer for a little while until that meat becomes fork tender. Now when you use, this is sirloin tip steak, which is it's pretty tender, but it's not as tender as regular, like top sirloin or your ribeye or your, your strip steak. So you do have to braise it a little bit or let it go in order for it to get fork tender. So what we're going to do, we're going to let this come up to a boil. Once it comes up to a boil, we're going to reduce the heat. We're going to cover it and we're going to let it simmer. All right, guys, we're a half hour into our cook with the gravy and everything in it. So now you just want to give it a nice little stir. Now's a good time to taste your gravy and make sure that everything is seasoned up to your liking. Then you also want to taste your meat and see if it's tender enough for your liking. So that's what we're going to do. As far as tenderness is concerned, we are really, really close. So now we're going to add in our snow peas, but I do want to add in a little bit more seasoning. We're going to go with a little bit more onion and garlic, a little more black pepper, and we're going to add in a little bit of more of our Montreal steak. Just a little bit. All right. Now once we get that in, we're going to go in with our snow peas. I have rinsed those off. and just kind of fold them into the mixture, into the gravy. It's not going to take very long for these snow peas to cook. Again, we don't want these to get mushy per se. We just want them to soften up some and have a nice little bite to them. All right. So we're gonna let them cook down a little bit, cover it back up, let them go for about 15 minutes or so. And once we're done, after 15, we should be ready to serve. So stay tuned. All right, y'all, here's the finished look. Everything is cooked really well. The gravy is the right consistency that I want. The meat is nice and fork tender. Our vegetables are just the way I want them. We have a nice little bite with our snow peas. And then our peppers and onions are really soft the way I want them. So I'm gonna let it rest a little bit, wait on this rice to get done, and we'll plate up here in a little bit. All right, y'all. Now we've just got our bed of white rice here. Cooked it in a rice cooker, quick and easy. We're just gonna spoon some of this beef and snow peas and peppers right over the top. You see how the consistency of that gravy, the vegetables, onions, peppers. This is exactly what you want. Now, if you wanted a little kick, add some pepper to it. Red pepper, and you're ready to rock. Hope you all enjoyed the recipe. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe. Share the video out. Till the next time, guys, God bless.